Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are in the book of Genesis, chapter 16, verses 1 through 16. Now, Abraham was afraid that he was never going to have a son, an offspring, right? And the Lord expressly promises Abraham in chapter 15 that he will have a natural heir, one from his own body, right? Well, more time passes, and Sarah still is barren. And, the longer this promise is delayed, the more heavily this cross that is laid upon both Abram and Sarai becomes unbearable. This is a trial that is just, and temptation that's really they're struggling with. And so she offers her maidservant, who is much younger. And they don't resort to this because of lust. It's out of desperation. They succumb to temptation because they've been waiting and waiting to have an offspring that would fulfill the promise, right, of the seed promised to Adam in paradise, or out of paradise. And so they're waiting for that, and they think, okay, this will be a way to do this. They're trying to help God. Obviously, God needs some help here. And I want us to think about when we're impatient for God and we think that God needs a little nudge from us, a help from us. And even though Sarah is barren, she knows that her husband, Abram, loves her. And she willingly concedes that she is barren. In fact, she says she doesn't blame Satan. She says, the Lord has prevented me from bearing. And she acknowledges this is an act of God with humility. And with that humility, conceding that she's not fertile, she turns over her handmaid for the glory, the prestige of being fertile. And so Abram goes into Hagar. And the purpose of this was so that Sarah would lay claim to that child as her own. Yes, this is sort of very convoluted situation. It becomes a mess because now the maidservant no longer feels like a maidservant when she gets pregnant. Now she feels like a co-spouse, co-wife, right? And she begins to despise her mistress, Sarah, in comparison with herself, because Sarah is an old lady, right? And she is a young, curvaceous woman who is now pregnant with the master's child. And there is a domestic discussion. That's the way Luther put it. As putting it mildly. The words are harsh. And Sarah throws down, may the Lord judge between me and you because you've done this to me. And Sarah thinks that she's being, treated unfairly. And she thinks that, Hagar thinks that she no longer has to acknowledge Sarai as her mistress, that she no longer has to abide by her commands, and she treats her with indifference and even contempt. And so Abram, being the brave man he is, says, you deal with it. And so she casts her out. She casts out Hagar and the child out into the wilderness. And what happens there? The Lord comes to her and provides for her. And as an angel says, go back and submit to her, and I will bless you if you're in your humility. And you will give birth to a child, and he will be a wild donkey of a man, but many great nations will come from him. And she calls him the Lord who sees me, even in my difficulties. Hey, that's all the time I have. Have a blessed day.